For my whole life, I've suffered from anxiety and depression, worsening as I got older. That is, until this winter, when I discovered the secret of self-empowerment, and I left my torment in a heap by the roadside. No meds, no therapist, just the power of thought and action. Emotional struggle is different for everyone, so if professional help is right for you, then by all means go for it. But maybe, like I did, you have what you need inside of you. What's my secret? I became a consequentialist. I began the practice of identifying my values, making plans for the future in accordance with those values, and deliberately choosing my thoughts and actions based on the value of their consequences with regard to those plans. My journey to self-empowerment had 4 stages: self-realization, habit building, internal validation, and thought control. I used to live day to day, going from one thing to another based on my whims and impulses. I'd never had to plan for the future because I'd always had a plan laid out for me. Growing up, college, graduate school, and I assumed something else would fall into place after that. But it didn't. At age 27, I graduated and found myself alone in the big, scary world of capitalism. So there I was, with 2.5 decades worth of habits and mindsets that were pretty much useless. But when I thought about changing, of learning new ways, it felt hopeless, like I was trapped behind a barrier that everybody else just seemed to be able to walk through. In November, the chaotic threads of my life converged, sparking the self-realization I needed. I'd always thought my motivation was based on a love of knowledge and a desire to share wonderful things with the world. But in that moment, I saw through to my subconscious motivation and realized that deep down, I craved attention and external validation. You can see this if you watch my 2020 videos and notice at the end that I asked for patrons and subscribers every single time. This realization shocked and disgusted me, and for a time it pushed me even deeper into depression. But I got through that period with a line from a video game I'd been playing at about that time, God of War, a story about an old regretful warrior who is trying to learn to be a dad and come to terms with his violent and evil past. Both characters resonated with me beginning to end, but one line stood out like a red stripe on a Spartan warrior's cursed ash skin.
I'm sorry.
Do not be sorry. Be better.
Now that's consequentialism. This prompted me to ask the question, how can I be better? What can I change about my actions and my thought behaviors to make myself better? And I discovered that I had to start thinking about the future. I had to set goals, make realistic plans in order to reach those goals, and act on those plans. Thus, I entered stage 2. Habit building. I needed to start taking care of myself, cleaning, cooking my own meals, and exercising every day. At this time, a friend recommended a book to a group that I'm a part of, The Power of Habit. This book models habits as a 3-step process: a trigger, a behavior, and a reward. The trigger gets your body craving the reward and sets you on autopilot through the behavior. Let's say you want to start exercising every morning. So you choose a trigger, something that's easy, that you do every day already, like turning on the coffee machine. So once you turn on the coffee machine, then you exercise. When you finish exercising, you pour yourself a cup of coffee and enjoy it. Those are the ingredients for a habit. The trigger is turning on the coffee machine, the behavior is exercising, and the reward is that sweet, energizing cup of coffee. To change a bad habit, you identify the trigger and the reward, and then change out the behavior so that it gives you the same reward. For instance, if you have a bad habit of arguing on people with social media, then you want to identify what triggers you to log on to social media and see those people who are just so wrong. Maybe it's the time of day, like 4 p.m. You just feel like logging on at 4 p.m. every day. And the reward is that you feel good about yourself for telling those wrong people how wrong they are. So if you want to change that habit from arguing online to something healthy, You can do something else that gives you the same reward of feeling good, like taking a walk. You feel the urge to log on and you decide, you know what? I'm going to go outside and walk down the road for an hour. So you go outside and you walk, and then you come back and you feel good about yourself and you didn't have to argue with anyone. Trigger, bad behavior swapped out for a good behavior, and the same sweet reward. Of course, it doesn't happen immediately. You have to practice. You have to be deliberate about it. But after a week or two, it becomes so natural that you don't even think about it. That is the power of habit. Now, when you're starting out and you don't have many good habits, then if you're like me, you think, oh, that seems like so much work. How can I possibly add new things to my life when just living takes up all my energy? The answer is to build keystone habits. Habits that if you do every day or every week, give you energy instead of taking it away. This makes no sense and goes completely counter to all intuition, but it's true. There are habits that you can do that give you more energy than if you don't do them. And I know this because I've experienced it myself. Things like exercising, showering in the morning, cooking your own food, and cleaning put you in the mindset that I am the kind of person who does things. And that mindset translates to other activities like work and hobbies. I've had magnitudes more energy since adding keystone habits to my life, and have gotten so much more done. Of course, even building keystone habits does take effort, so I would recommend starting with one that's really easy: making your bed. It takes 20 seconds, and then for the rest of the day you have a nice neat bed in the corner of your eye reminding you that you're a nice neat person and you can get stuff done. One final note about habit: if you come at it with a mindset of shame, where you're thinking, oh man, if I don't do this, then I'm a bad person and I'm a failure, then it's not going to get done. Just look at how New Year's resolutions turn out. Instead, think about all the things you wish you had the energy to do, and about how these keystone habits can give you that energy so that you can finally do them. Consequentialism. Stage 3. Finding internal validation. It was time to change my motivation from attention seeking to something that would guide me into a positive future. So I took a week off social media, which for me meant a week away from human contact, and focused on finding fulfillment by myself. I wrote, read books, played guitar, and started up a new hobby that I didn't tell anyone about for 2 months. It was incredibly refreshing, like going off soda and discovering that, hey, this water stuff is pretty good. During this time, I read another book that a different friend had recommended to me, The War of Art. This book calls out all the internal things that keep us from pursuing our life's calling: procrastination, negative thoughts, and excuses. But instead of pointing the finger at us and saying, you're lazy, get your act together, it conceptualizes these things as a force outside of us called resistance, which we can fight against as heroes. One idea of this book in particular stood out to me: the distinction between living hierarchically and living territorially. Someone who behaves hierarchically is always comparing themselves to others and trying to make themselves better by pushing others down. Someone who behaves territorially sets aside a conceptual territory for themselves and says, this is my project, this is my space, these are my interests, and I'm not in competition with anyone. Now, we've all heard the message that we shouldn't compare ourselves to others and should strive to be our own best selves instead. But hearing it in the language of hierarchy versus territory made something click with me that never had before. With this new mindset, I was finally able to switch my motivation from attention seeking to something much more healthy: maintaining my territory. I reevaluated my hobbies, giving up the ones that were not contributing to my life, and taking a more professional mindset toward the ones that remained. You can see me going through this in the video I put out a few weeks ago, where I talk about my thoughts on what makes stories worthwhile. Now when I create, my goal is no longer to get reactions, but to create something that is fulfilling to me and valuable to others. And the thing is, the moment I made this switch, my lifelong anxiety disappeared. and it has not shown up since. By the way, if you're interested in The Power of Habit or The War of Art, you can have them or any other 2 books read for you for free by signing up with a free trial of Audible using the link in the description. And whichever books you choose are yours to keep, whether you decide to stay on with Audible or not. I've been an Audible subscriber for years, even through the chaos of 2020, and it is absolutely worth it. And finally, stage 4, thought control. I've always been a thinker, analyzing things front and back, inside and out, never satisfied until I could find the truest, most complete interpretation. For this channel, that's been really helpful. For my emotional health, not so much. Any little thing could spark a spiral of negative thoughts, and once the ball of depression got rolling, it got rolling. I would get lost in the thoughts that fed on themselves and drove me deeper into depression by reinforcing themselves, by taking everything that I saw and viewing it through the lens of confirmation bias. But I allowed it because I viewed it as facing the truth, which was the most important thing. That was wrong. When it comes to interpreting your emotions, there is no truth. It's all made up. The truth that matters is whether you're living in alignment with your values. A few weeks ago, I found an article by a psychology professor on emotional strength, the ability to face negative emotions and see what it is that they're trying to tell you about the actions you can take regarding your circumstances. Your emotions do not tell you that you're a horrible person or the universe is against you. What your emotions tell you is to take a step back and evaluate how well you're living in accordance with your values. And here's where consequentialism comes in again. If we find we are not living in accordance with our values, we make a realistic plan with tangible steps we can take to get back into alignment, and then we follow through with that plan. If we are living in alignment with our values, we can tell our negative thoughts to take a hike. Only positive thoughts allowed. When I first started doing this, I couldn't think of any positive thoughts. So I thought of nothing. Over the hours and days, positive thoughts slowly trickled into my mind until thinking positively became normal. Now, when I feel the stirrings of a depressive episode coming on, I remember the plans that I've laid out for the future, and I think of the things I've been doing today, yesterday, and this past week in accordance with those plans. And I recognize my proto-depressive feelings as nothing more than a chemical process in my body, and I brush away the negative thoughts like cockroaches under a broom, and the depression melts away before it even appears. And that is how I conquered depression and anxiety. I became a consequentialist, choosing my actions and thoughts so as to move toward the goals I set for myself in accordance with my values. It was a 4-step process: self-realization, habit building, internal validation, and thought control. Through these, I went from someone blown about on the winds of impulse to a self-empowered individual. So what do you think? Are these ideas helpful to you? Have you been through a process like this yourself? Or is your situation different? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.